Hello guys, in this video we'll have a look at PHP switch statement and how it works and what it allows us to do. So first thing, what switch statement allows us to do in programming in general, not only in PHP programming, is it allows us to compare different cases to one value, and then when some case matches that value, it runs that particular piece of code which is in that case. So let's have a look at syntax of switch statement, and then we will talk about it and have a look how it really works. So to write a switch statement, we simply write switch, and then we will write opening closing bracket, and then we'll write our block of code where all our cases will be placed. And then to write a case, we write case, okay, and then we can give some value. For example, we could give value 1, okay, and to finish case we use column, okay. And after here, in case itself, we can have some code to run, for example, okay. This code will be running if this case's value will match to whatever is in this switch statement. We'll have a look at it in a second. Just now let's write syntax, and here we write break, okay. So now let's talk about it, and now for example let's put value 1 in this switch statement, and like I mentioned before, when this case value will match that value which is in switch statement, it will run that particular case and will break out. This break means that it will run the case, and this break statement will break out of this switch statement at all. And we can have as many cases as we want, and whenever first case which value matches that value which we are switching will be met, it will run that code and will break out of switch statement and will continue any code which is after this closing curly bracket. Let's have a look how it works, and to make it a little bit more interesting, let's create a variable on top, and let's call this variable number, okay, and let's give it a value, let's say 5, okay. We store number 5 in this value, and then in this switch statement we will be switching this particular variable, which means that we will be looking or searching for case which matches this number value. So, and we will run that code. Let's write some echo statement, echo, and let's echo on the screen some string value which we will say this is number, and let's say 1, okay. We will echo on the screen this is number 1, and we can write another case, just copy, and here we will add value 2, for example, or we can add more cases, and like I mentioned before, we can add as many cases as we want, but each case has to start with keyword case, then comes value, whatever value we would want to put in there, which we will be actually comparing to this whatever is in these brackets, and whenever this switch value which is in this switch brackets will match particular case, it will execute that code which comes after case, and then when it means break, it will break out and will continue any code after this closing bracket, okay. It will even not read any more cases which come after. It will only and always execute one case if there will be match. If there will not be match, it will not simply execute anything, like you understand, because cases didn't match and things like that. And similarly, like in if statement, at the end we can put a default value, for example default, which we could execute if no cases match. For example, default we could say there, let's add some variable, not variable, but let's echo out on the screen string value, there is no match, like there is no match found, for example, yeah, found. And this will be executed, this default, only in that case if no matches were found. And default you can add if you want, and if you want you can simply skip it. It means it's the same as in if-else statement which we previewed earlier. It means that if you want, you can add this default, and if you don't want, you just don't add it, and nothing will happen if there's no cases will match. But if their case will match, then that particular code, whatever is in that case, will run. And when it will meet break statement, it will break out after and continue with code which is after this closing bracket, curly bracket of switch statement code block. Okay, so let's now have a look. So we have number and we have stored 5 in it, and now we are comparing this number to cases, and whenever case with value 5 will be met, we will execute that particular code. For example, here I will say echo this is number 1, echo this is number 2, for example, and then let's add the last case, add this number 5, and this is number 4, for example, for now. Let's leave 4, and there, as you see, now there is no cases that match, because this is the values. First case is 1, of second case is 2, and of third case it will be 4. Okay, it will not be 5. And default echo there is no match found will be executed. If we save this, we go back to our browser, we refresh, and we see that there is no match found is executed on the screen, because there has no been cases matched. So, and like I mentioned before, we can just, if we want, don't use this default and nothing will happen. No errors, no notices will be executed, because this is optional. Optionally you can use that default and cannot use if you want. And sorry guys, we open browser, refresh, and you see nothing is executed because I removed this default. But now let's say here at the very end, I will now change this last case's value to 5. And here in echo statement, I will say this is number 5. Okay, let's save it now. Let's go back to our browser, refresh, and you see this is number 5 is executed on the screen. But if we go back, and like I mentioned before, only one case will be executed. For example, now if I will change this case's first number to 5 as well. So now, as like I mentioned before, this first case only will be executed. Whatever code it will meet, it will be start comparing this variable 5, in which we're storing 5, to these cases, and it will meet that here in the first case that there is 5, and it will execute this code, this is number 1, and will leave this switch statement. It won't even get to this last one. And now we can save this, go back to browser, refresh, and you see this is number 1 is executed on the screen. And this is only because it already met first case, and like I mentioned before, when it meets first case, which value matches whatever is in this switch statement, whatever value we are switching, it executes that block of code of that case only. It won't even read next cases. Once it executes, it meets this break statement, and then it continues to read under whatever, if we write more code under this closing curly bracket. But there is another thing which I just wanted to tell you. If you for some reason don't forget to use this break statement at the end of this case, okay, it will continue to read and execute next case as well, even if the value of this next case is 2, because actually when case starts running, it will stop running only when it needs break statement. So in this case, you will see, in this scenario, you will see that it will meet case 5, and it will execute on the screen. This is number 1, and then it will continue to read this code down, and it will ignore this case because now it's looking for break statement to break out of this case, and it will execute this is number 2 on the screen, and then it will meet this break statement, and it will then it will leave this switch statement. So let's save this, let's go preview this in the browser, and we see this is number 1 and this is number 2 is displayed on the screen just because we removed this break. But if we put back these breaks, okay, then we save it, go back, refresh, and we see this is number 1 is executed on the screen. Yes, this is pretty much how switch statement work, not only in PHP programming language, but in all programming languages, and this is how you can use it in your scripts and in programming. And like I'm mentioning all the time, if it still doesn't make really sense when you will start writing code, you will start understanding where we use all these statements. And in next video we'll have a look at loops, and we will have a look at while loop. And yes guys, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, leave a like, and see you in next video.